Just very briefly, so I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of a company called ONA. We work on using data to help, improve access to essential services. We work a lot through the UN and kind of our international partners, ministries of health, to do that, and a lot of focus on digital health. We're a US and Kenyan company, so really proud of the diversity of our team and the fact that a lot of our work is developed in Kenya, where most of our engineers are. So a lot of what I'm showing you today is coming out of our Nairobi office. We've been around about 9 years and have been the technical stewards of OpenSRP for about the last decade. OpenSRP is a digital health global good. We work both at the applications, both at the primary health facility level and also the community health level. OpenSRP is currently being used to power the national CHW platform in Tanzania, and will be rolled out in Liberia over the next few months. We're kind of large scale and facilities and child immunization, and working with WHO and others around ANC and other different modules. But today I want to talk about our journey into FHIR and our decision 2 years ago to create a new version, an upgraded version of OpenSRP that we're calling OpenSRP FHIRCore, which is 100% FHIR native and compliant with the WHO Smart Guidelines. I think you probably have all been briefed about this, but really the vision around the Smart Guidelines is as follows. WHO, as everybody knows, develops these kind of operational guidelines that are kind of PDF format in documents. And then, they expect that to be implemented in health facilities or in communities by health workers. And with the introduction of digital, it's been on the duty of software developers to interpret those guidelines. So we worked with WHO to actually generate the first reference ANC application on OpenSRP. And it was about a 1.5 year process, to be honest. It was ANC, clinical ANC is very complex. So we spent a lot of time working at WHO to understand how do we translate these operational guidelines to digital, how do we represent it, in spreadsheets and all the logic. Then we had to program it. And just the back and forth to QA, all that work to get the logic right. We're still finding small bugs, in our logic. So it's a huge undertaking to adopt guidelines properly. So the vision kind of coming out of that was, wouldn't it be great if we could leverage FHIR and clinical query language, which is a subset of FHIR, to come up with guidelines that can be programmed by organizations like WHO and then adapted by ministries of health and local implementers to their country norms, but starting with the standardized logic provided by WHO and standardized data model that FHIR provides. Then the question was, okay, if we have these sort of L3 artifacts, how are we going to actually implement them? Because there's not any software kind of to date that would do that. So we, working with WHO and with Google, started an initiative about 2 years ago to look at, would it be possible to develop a new kind of generation of applications on top of that? And I think Jing from Google and I think Carl have presented some of this work. So basically we said, let's look at it. And we realized that, technically, yes, it's a lot of work, but we think it's possible. And with Google's leadership, set out to start to develop an SDK. So basically an Android library, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, to do it. So we kind of realized it was viable. And that led us for the decision to kind of go all in on FHIR as an organization and try and speed up the vision of having L4 apps that countries could then use to do it. So that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. But before I do that, I want to walk you through a little bit of our rationale on why we made such a large decision for us as a company to sort of, I don't want to say abandon, but to kind of rewrite and upgrade our system to this FHIR kind of native approach that's smart guideline compliant. First of the things I just want to emphasize about FHIR is that it's what we really like about FHIR, besides providing like a shared data model, which is really key for interoperability. It provides us a very clear way and a shared way to think about health. We were finding that whenever we were asked to add a new function in our digital health work, so for example, in Tanzania, we were asked to create a referral between a community health worker and a facility. We wanted to say, well, what is a proper way to do a referral? We could have hacked something together, but then we looked and we discovered that tasks are the way that FHIR does referrals, and the data model for tasking actually is quite perfect for doing a referral. You're setting a task for a specific type of health service to be done. So we adopted that, and we learned as we were kind of adding new functionality to our work that we always went back to the FHIR data model as inspiration. So, we think that, having a common way to build applications, to think about it and extend it if needed. FHIR provides a great way for extending the functionality is really, really, quite powerful. So we think that, first of all, just agreeing, having a common language, having something that we all sort of agree upon is a massive win. And it might be reason enough to adopt FHIR. That's kind of one of the key things. The other thing that FHIR provides, and this is kind of getting more into the work we're doing, is that it provides kind of immediate value, and that it provides an approach called structured data capture. And this is a way to author forms and to then extract the data from those forms into different FHIR resources. So one of the things that we've developed, the first things that Google developed in the SDK that we're leveraging, is this idea of questionnaires. So questionnaire in FHIR is the same thing as like an X form or an XLS form that you may have used with ODK, but it's sort of the FHIR equivalent. So it's a different kind of format, but it allows you to author in a standardized way forms with a lot of skip logic, kind of all the different things, and it has support for encoding it to different terminology services. When you save a questionnaire, it exports something called a questionnaire response. And then the other nice thing about FHIR is it provides this thing called data extraction, which allows you to, on the device or on the server, extract that questionnaire to the corresponding resources. So if you do a patient registration form, you can on device with logic in the form, extract the patient. If you're doing a health visit, you can record an encounter, and then all the different clinical observations would be added as observations in the observation resource table linked to that encounter. So what's really nice about that is if you're a clinician and you're building an application for, say, a clinician, and you want to see like blood pressure over time, you don't have to parse through all the different forms to wonder where you ask that question. All you have to do is look up your observation table and filter it out for your blood pressure observations. So that kind of thing is really, really nice. So having data go to the right place is a key thing. So this is sort of what the FHIR SDK provides, and which is what our application is built on top of. So it provides sort of all the key things you need for developing a digital health app in FHIR. So it provides your storage, which is in basically like a little mini FHIR server in SQL. It provides the data entry, which I just showed you. It has the ability to execute smart guidelines or CQL, and it has the ability to sync to a FHIR server. And then this is kind of the architecture then that you're working with, which is kind of nice. So, as an app developer, we're developing. What I'm going to show you today is that OpenSRP is here. And what it allows us to do is leverage any FHIR health server. That's a health API or FHIR API, they're called. So there's Smile, CDR, Happy, which is you're using, which is an open source version. But Google, Microsoft, Amazon all offer now FHIR servers. And the nice thing is, since the backend has the same API, you can kind of choose which one makes sense for you. You then extend it with different things. So you have a web interface, which I'll give you a preview of, and my colleague Ben will be presenting later in the month, called FHIR Web. You have a strategy for analytics, but also really importantly, the data can then feed into other systems that also support FHIR. So DHIS2 has created a FHIR adapter. So using that, we've created the ability for a COVID project to register a patient, record their immunizations, and then pass that information to DHIS2 tracker, and then use that to issue a COVID-19 vaccine certificate. So, all you're really doing is building for FHIR, and that allows the ecosystem to then help support the integration work, which is really key. On top of that, one of the first things we've been doing with OpenSRP is developing something called Quest. And our goal with Quest is to provide a very simple, flexible tool for people that just want to collect data in FHIR questionnaires. So you maybe not have maybe you don't want to build a full community health or full facility app, but you want to just register patients and fill out a meningitis form or specific form, but still want it to be FHIR based and submit to a FHIR server. So with Quest, we make it easy to author, to register patients, and then author questionnaires and collect data using that questionnaire. So it's sort of like an ODK, but built on top of FHIR. The other thing that's really important about the FHIR approach and the Smart Guidelines compliancy is this ability to support more advanced clinical logic. So a lot of these L3 guidelines are programmed in something called CQL. It's very similar to SQL, and it's a combination of that and FHIR expressions. Basically, what that allows you to do is program. You have your questionnaires, and then next to your questionnaires, you have this executable code that's based on clinical logic. So it's basically let WHO do the programming. You can view that programming in a very visible way. So the logic of the app is not embedded in the application itself. It's outside in a configuration file that a clinician can review to make sure it's accurate. And then that is what the app uses for its logic. So it's extracting the logic out to be transparent, visible, and you can run tests on it, things like that. So it really is nice because it allows the clinicians to be closer to the logic and reduce that errors that we see that we're really excited by. This is the transcription errors. The other thing that we think is really critical about FHIR, and is something that may not be apparent right away, but if we're talking about interoperability, we really want to be able to see a patient, support a patient's continuum of care from the community to the local health facility to the hospital. FHIR provides that visibility, a shared data model to do that. So while it's quite cool that with OpenSRP FHIRCore, we can build a facility app, build a community app, and link those together. What's really exciting is when OpenMRS, when they adopt FHIR, they could also view that patient, pick up that referral, or DHS to another platform can do that. So the moment we could start to share workflows and tasking and referrals across these applications, and not just passing a health record around, but actually tasking and sharing these different things that are related to workflows and care coordination, things become really, really, really exciting. So that could be medications, it could be prescriptions, referrals, all these other things that the FHIR data model enables. Think of that across systems. That's really kind of what the future enables, and I don't think we've gotten there yet in terms of digital health. Another one is this idea of semantic interoperability and analytics. One thing we're particularly excited about FHIR is it encodes, when you're building your application, it outputs data in a very standardized way. So if you're developing, say, a WHO, an ANC application, across 2 different countries, while the application might be slightly different, the majority of your data coming out of that will be exactly in the same kind of formatting and the same structure, and also the same terminology coding. And I think that unlocks a lot of things. If you look at the analytics in healthcare, they're really constrained for the most part for research on specific projects. We haven't standardized things in a way that allow for specialization of, machine learning algorithms for maternal health risk. We know the logic for that, but where is the add-on that you can run that across 10 countries, right? It's because the data model for each country currently is different based on how the app is built. If we can adopt the Smart Guidelines, we could have that standardized data model that allows for the specialization to occur. And the specialization is also, I think, the other massive gain we get by going with this approach. So standards promote specialization, which create software ecosystems. What this basically means is we don't have to build everything to provide a solution. And that's huge. For OpenSRP, by switching to FHIRCore, we're able to retire the OpenSRP server, which is something we've been managing and developing for 10 years. We can now leverage the work of other companies like Google or Smile CDR to do that work for us. And they're very, very good at that. So there's a lot of really exciting things. So here's just an example of a tool from the Norwegian Health Institute. This allows you to author questionnaires, which is the format I was mentioning. So you can see sort of a questionnaire. You could add different types of questions. You could add questions with skip logic. So for example, this question only shows up if the child is having respiratory failure. So this is like a really robust tool for creating your forms, and then also previewing them. And this could even be used for data collection. And my colleague Ben will talk more about that in a couple of weeks. But here is a view of the questionnaire. And this is exactly the same logic that you would see on the N-Ray device. So here's a simple clinical guideline that we were able to create in FHIR using this tool. So this is something that we did not have to build. This would probably take us a year to build, and they did a wonderful job, and the Norwegian government supporting it. So any country in AeHIN now can take advantage of this tool, and we encourage you to do that. There are some other things that have been missing. So one of the things that ONA has been contributing besides FHIRCore is FHIR Web. This provides an interface for managing digital health implementation, from managing your practitioners to location management to viewing patient data, etc. And then that leads us to the FHIRCore, which I'm talking to today. So the SDK that Google has developed with WHO and with us and partners provides you the core functionality, but it is not a digital health app itself. It doesn't have a UI. It doesn't have a login screen. It doesn't have all those things that you need to implement a health app. So what we've been doing is developing FHIRCore, which takes all the experience we've developed as a company in developing digital health apps and global goods. And we add in the register views, the data entry forms. We integrate with the sync, search, all these different things, the UI around it. But we've also added some of our own contributions, including a mapping functionality, peer-to-peer sync, which allows partners to sync, to health practitioners to sync their data offline between each other, etc. So just some quick examples of work we've already done using FHIRCore. We developed, early on, our first application was a COVID smart vaccine app. So this could register a patient, record vaccines, and then we integrated this with PATH and WHO to develop a smart vaccine certificate. And then we're also currently developing a CHW platform. This is what we're going to be rolling out in Liberia later in the year at national scale. And it incorporates this idea of kind of tasking, and it'll also support the idea of mapping. So we've done a lot of work in, say, Thailand and malaria, kind of focused investigations, and in other countries around kind of malaria control with indoor residual spraying. So we're taking the same idea and allowing you to register like where a household lives, view the status of tasks linked to that household, etc. And then the last thing I just want to emphasize is that we really feel that that FHIR is really important for promoting local ownership. The fact that at two different levels, one is that it levels the playing field for local tech implementers to develop their own solution. So, even though the SDK is still being actively developed, we were able to build, what I'm about to show you in about a year and a half. So, a local technical company could start from scratch and leverage the good work that Google's done to build their own platform. And it would take 5 years maybe to do that on their own. So it really helps in terms of allowing local companies to be more involved and more supportive of ministries of health. But also, I think the main thing is that it allows governments to really own the logic. Like, if you're thinking of building a health system, what we're really encouraging people to think about is don't focus on picking your platform, focus on picking your data model. Because once you pick a health platform, you actually are picking a data model that whatever tool, whether it's OpenSRP, DHIS2, Concur provide, we're locking you into kind of a data models per se. If you start with FHIR, then you can layer on top of it the different applications that support FHIR. I just think that's a lot better way to go. Plus, your logic can work across different applications. So invest your time in making sure that your ANC guidelines really meet the needs of your people, and not so much how it works in a specific app. So that's kind of the last thing of why we're really excited kind of by this approach. So just to wrap up, our FHIR vision is, we think of these apps that are FHIR native that support the guidelines will allow us to view data across the health system. We really want to promote this idea of standards-based clinical logic that's not locked into any specific platform. It allows us to, the semantic interoperability of data allows for, specialization in analytics, for better research, to understand, health science better, so we can come up with better guidelines. It's a much better investment of money that, we don't have to all build. We can specialize and build different things and contribute on important open source projects, whether it's the Google SDK or FHIR Web or others, to make, the tools that we all use much better. So having that standardization is such a massive leap forward that we just haven't had before. So it's really an exciting time to be in digital health. I'm going to switch over now, and I'm going to share my screen and show you the application quick. Now, I want to do this quickly because I do want to make sure we leave time for ample discussion and kind of questions. So
we can see it.
Okay, can you see? Wonderful. Okay, so this is a version of our community health worker app. This is what we're using in Tanzania. So it's in Liberia. It's still a work in progress. So there's some issues still, and some of the UI and all the forms aren't working perfectly. So please excuse that. But I do think this provides a pretty exciting preview of what's possible, in a very short-term basis. So the way this works is we have this is meant for community health workers. So the base approach is we have this idea of communities. So you would have, a family. So here we have a family with a household, the Johnson family, with the father, a male, head of household, and then, two females of different ages. And then we have a child who's a 2-year-old child. And I'll walk you through this a little bit. We also have different registers. So besides the households, we're also to extract out the women that are in ANC, and view this is still kind of the UI is a bit of work in progress, but see the different women that are what we call it assigned to a care plan. And one of the things that FHIR introduces this idea of a care plan, and that's basically a way of saying, like when a woman becomes pregnant, let's enroll her in an ANC care plan. So that's all her antenatal care visits. And from that, we could basically create all the questionnaires, all the different interventions that are needed. And then we could also schedule them for that woman. So we can say, she needs to have, 8 ANC visits at the schedule. She needs to have, some of them need to be at the community level. Some of them need to be at the facility. We need to create a birth plan. We need to have a health outcome, a pregnancy outcome. So you could basically, based on the kind of the layout of what's supposed to happen during a healthy pregnancy, establish that. And when we want to register the woman, generate all the associated tasks for that woman. And then that's the basis for making sure that we provide her proper care. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and register a woman here. We're going to do it to the Lincoln family. So I'm going to add Mary Lincoln, just to show you how this works. I'm going to pick her date of birth. So I'm going to go back and say her date of birth is 1994. Okay, oh, so that's the problem here. So there's a little UI thing here. Okay. Okay. Great. I'm going to say she's a female. She's not the family head. Excuse me. She's not the primary caregiver, and she is, let's say she has a secondary school education. I'm going to save it, and I'm just going to go back. There's a little bit of a thing where it doesn't refresh immediately. So now if I see the Lincoln family, I see there's now 2 family members in the household, okay? And I can see that Mary is a female, 22 years old, okay? So now what I want to do is I want to view her profile. Our profile is very basic. This is still being worked on. But I want to do is I want to say that she is now, I'm going to record an ANC, okay? So I'm going to say this is an active finding. I'm going to say the pregnancy has not been confirmed yet. I'm going to say she's referred. So all this logic here is programmed using the questionnaire, using the tool I showed you before. And you can see that there's a really nice kind of skip logic. So if I say no, well, I'll show you some examples of the skip logic in a minute. So I'm going to pick her LMP dates. Let's put it back just a month from here, okay? And now you can see that it calculates her expected date of delivery. This is done with the clinical query language. And so this is sort of an example of how your smart guideline can work. This in the future will calculate this. This hasn't been programmed yet. And I'm going to say, for example, if they have danger signs, you can see that the skip logic appears for it. So for now, let's just say there's no danger signs. And let's say there's no birth plan yet. So I'm going to hit save. And now you can see that immediately for Mary, we've now created her, we've added her to a care plan. So we can see now that all the different things. So right now, the activity we have are ANC follow-ups. So we go back to her, we'll see that she now has these tasks assigned to her. And we could also see if we go to the Lincoln family that she's now pregnant in the register here. And I could also find her now in the ANC register, okay? So going back now, this shows you that a task is due. So let's just do a quick ANC visit, say, has she made a hospital visit? Let's say yes. Let's pick the date of the ANC visit, say it's a week ago. Does she have any danger signs? Okay, let's say she does, fever and chill. Okay, let's refer to the hospital. Okay, we'll do that. No, she has not made a birth plan. And let's say she's doing exclusive breastfeeding. So I'm going to hit save. Now I've done this update. Now if I go back here, if I go back to Mary, this is where I can now see that the ANC follow-up task has been complete. So there's still some stuff around, this shouldn't be showing here, but you can start to see how you can start to check off and view and kind of complete the activities assigned to that person. So that's at a high level, the idea of adding people to a care plan and assigning tasks to them. And the same logic could apply for a child. I could, let's just add one more patient quickly. Let's add, so Tad, Lincoln. Let's say the date of birth is June, male. None. Okay, so I'm going to add Tad as a child to the register. So if I go back here, sorry again for that little glitch. We can now see that we have a child. And if I view the profile, I can see that we now have routine visits that are due, which is kind of nice. So this is a scheduled visit. So there's one due in 5 days. The child's not old enough yet for their first visit, at least according to this logic. But I also can do something like I could also report that the child is sick. So here I could say it's an active thing. The child has symptoms, is referred to the facility. And what'll happen is, if I go back to TAD, I can see that the system is automatically created immediately a sick child referral. So I now have to go back in a day or two and then check to see if that referral was done and who did that visit. So you can see how we could start to chain together this logic linked to tasks and data collection forms to do kind of really robust kind of workflows. So that's sort of at a high level, sort of a summary. So we have this idea of enrolling people in care plans, allowing you to then to collect data using, pretty nice forms that are authored in questionnaires. And these are all saved to FHIR resources, which you can then view on a server and do other things with. The other little bits that in terms of our progress with FHIRCore is we're also making all these views configurable. So we, as part of your building your application, you could actually program the definitions of what's in a view using FHIR. So the nice thing about that is we could actually, when you sync your app, you could update your questionnaires, you could update the UI. We can give a specific provider access to specific registers on the same application. So we could actually modify the UI for what the provider sees based on the roles and the specific functions of that health worker, which is exciting. Just other couple of quick things. We have support for multiple languages, so you could switch this between different things. So it's not all translated at you because like the search and stuff is now different. The forms, if they were authored in different languages, would be different. Like I mentioned, we have peer-to-peer sync. So this allows you to scan for different devices and using Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, sync your data offline. The other thing that we've done that's I think exciting is we've worked on in-app reporting. And what's notable about this is actually using measure, evaluate, and measure reports, which are also a way in FHIR to define basically health indicators and calculate indicators using CQL and FHIR. So this is also the first working example. We got support from Digital Square and PATH to do this work. So thank you very much, PATH, if you're listening. What this allows us to do is it allows us to generate logic that's defined in FHIR to run reporting in apps. So here's just a quick example where I want to run an ANC patient report based off of a couple indicators in FHIR. So it's a little bit slow the first time, but once you run it, it runs really quickly, and we're working on optimizing this. So this shows me that during that month, we have 21 women that are actively pregnant. And then you can see the distribution of their ages of the women. We also can see the state of their pregnancy, so which phase or trimester they're in. This may have some issues in it, but that's the general idea. So we could then use this to power all the different kind of logic you want to have in your in-app reports, and we can obviously change the UI to do different types of reporting formats. But the really powerful thing here is this is actually programmed in FHIR, so you don't have to talk to an engineer to do it. If you want to learn how the measure reports work, that can be part of your guidelines linked to all of your logic. So when you can really think about designing your system holistically, from your data collection to your indicators, and have that all be part of an app that the health system designer can figure out, and not the programmer. And then just the last little bit is I just want to switch back and show you briefly OpenSRP Web. I'm going to hand this over. My colleague, Ben, will be doing a more detailed view of this later. But this is basically OpenSRP Web. What this allows us to do is it allows us to manage providers. It allows us to manage our locations. So you need to have hierarchies. So you have it's very similar to DHIS2, where you have your different levels of health facilities and villages. So you can do that. You can manage your providers. So this creates the health providers. You can assign them to teams, link them to locations. So all the different things you need to do to manage a health intervention. It also supports patient lookup. So I can view, for example, I don't know if I actually synced my app. Let me just see if I did. Quickly. But I don't know if Mary is in here yet. So she's not, but yesterday, I think I did. Bush. Let me just see 1 second. It should be syncing. So let's see if Mary shows up. Okay, cool. So we have Mary here that we registered on the demo. And I can see when I look her up, I can see her patient information. I can see all the different tasks. This is a work in progress, so you'll be able to see the tasks assigned to her, the questionnaire responses. We can see that she's an ANC care plan. The starting periods are from now, or September 1 to April 2023. That's exciting. You'll be able to see later on her observations and conditions. We can see that practitioner that's assigned to her. We can assign the plan definition. So some of these are not coming yet, but you can, you'll be able to see all the different health data here. And we also are working on the ability to also view the questionnaire. So here, is an example of some of the questionnaires I showed you in the application. And our vision longer term is to actually support data entry through the web too. So you would be able to use this on an iPhone or through a web interface. You'd be able to look up, register a patient and fill out the same clinical forms and do the same data extraction that you do in Android, but also on the web. And this is also what we use for previewing the forms that you would upload to your FHIRCore app. Great. So that's kind of where we're at. My colleague Ben will do a more detailed demo of our work on what we call FHIR Web. But I'd like to stop and I'd love to hand it over to questions and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. I think there are questions in the chat box, so let's go through them. From Vicente Alberto Puyat, thank you. Do you have any experiences with how well FHIR Logic handles more complex cases for different services like high-risk pneumonia in children, elderly patients with elevated blood pressure due to both diabetes complications and hypertensive diseases? It would be a great selling point if FHIR is already implementable to support integrated primary care services from the Philippines.
Great. Thank you, Vincent. So that's a great question. The answer is actually no, and I think that's a good thing. But can it be supported? Yes. So let me explain what I mean there. So WHO has developed the ANC guidelines that they've already developed as a DAC, a digital accelerator toolkit, and that supports very complex logic, similar to what you would see in a pneumonia case in a child or for hypertension or diabetes, right? And that's the intent. So the step for us now to do is what I showed you can implement more complex logic. What I was showing you is for CHW, which is simpler. So the idea is, once we can start to build these first reference applications for like the more complex clinical guidelines like ANC, which WHO has already authored, then what I mean by the fact that I don't have to be involved is the beautiful thing is that a health researcher, an expert in child pneumonia, or the WHO department can be the ones that can work with a technical expert to author the SMART guidelines and have that be the starting point. So I'm an engineer, don't have to interpret that. I can assume that WHO and their technical advisors, consultants that are expert in authoring this logic, can kind of do that work. So like one just quick example, I'm working with a group at Columbia University that's developed some very innovative mental health illness things, both at the facility and community. So for like nutrition, depression, substance abuse, suicide, that kind of stuff. So they developed some screening tools and treatment tools. So they're probably best in class to work at WHO to do it. And instead of developing this on a custom app, what we've been saying is let's work let's get this working. Let's work with WHO to sort of say this is a guideline. And then the nice thing is any country that wants to then take their work that they've done in mental health, review it and adapt it for, say, Thailand or the Philippines or Indonesia can do that, right? So what we're doing is we're giving power back to the health specialist, and we're kind of dividing up the work there. If that makes questions.
Matt.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the demo, and
yeah.
I knew you were keeping it simple. You were making it like a registry first of households, people inside the household, and just ANC. And just that singular program might already be complex already for many community health workers in
Sure.
developing countries.
Sure.
So I was thinking that, I think a gradual, so I think it's not the technology, we can cram a lot of technology in
For
a
sure.
mobile phone, but that might drown them. That might drown their, the data quality, their engagement, because they might get confused. What am I supposed to fill up? The ANC, the malaria, the TB? So I think the approach of ANC and SRP is a very easy first step to just get the health workers on the ground engaged with the identification and identification of their constituents.
Yeah.
Questions, Dr. Bunchai? In the semantic slide, what do GCP and GTF mean? Did you mean that you turn the data elements in the SMART guideline into questionnaire or FHIR profiles? And is OpenSRP now a FHIR server? Over.
Great. Thank you. A couple of questions there. So just very briefly, Alvin, on your point, well took that when I say I'm mixing up ANC in my language a little bit. So the CHW app is very simple ANC. It's like let's risk symptoms refer. So when we're developing a CHW app, whether it's for Tanzania or Liberia, it's based on the guidelines of what CHWs they're trained to do. So it's like child illness is like looking for risk symptoms referring. It's not the same as what they do at a facility. So it's really meant to be very, very simple forms. But I agree, we can't overwhelm with health workers. So yeah, Dr. Bunchai, so in terms of that, so GCP stands for Google Cloud Compute. So that was just an example of one scenario where you could use Google BigQuery to run our data warehouse. But the idea with the semantic interoperability, one is standardized data model on FHIR. Two is let's develop some tools. So once we get the data from FHIR into a data warehouse, we're working on developing some SQL tools, Python and SQL, that can generate the views. So you can program indicators and metrics on top of your data warehouse. So we can start to develop standardized views like number of visits per month, how many high-risk cases, etc. So there's also a lot of shared work needed on the analytics side. So the idea is extract out of your FHIR tool, put it in a data warehouse, and then develop standardized analytics and libraries to do that. So it's a separation of responsibilities. I hope that makes sense. So no, we are not a FHIR server anymore. That's the beautiful thing. We used to have a proprietary, it's open source, but it's proprietary that it's specific to OpenSRP and a server specific to OpenSRP to date, right? With the move to FHIRCore, that application we have now can point at, if OpenMRS supported a FHIR API in the future, we could actually point OpenSRP FHIRCore right to OpenMRS, as long as they support that health API. So we've removed that from our burden, which is really nice. So we could focus on the FHIR web, which is a wrapper to the server. Now there might be things we need to add, like task generation, analytics. There's other things on the server that we can extend, but we can leverage core APIs out there. Just to add to Emmanuel's question, yes, everything works offline. I apologize for not clarifying that. So all those workflows work offline. And what's really nice is that logic, the data extraction logic works. So you could do register a patient, the woman could have ANC, you could do the elderly ANC visits, and even have the children be born and register them and vaccinate them. You can do all that workflow offline.
How did you do that? Service workers?
No, it writes it to a local. SQLite is a local database in FHIR, and then we sync resources, right? So the beautiful thing is the app knows where all those things are. So it's like, okay, create a patient. The patient list is just that patient resource, viewed, things like that. So it's like a mini FHIR server on your device is the way to think of it. So the device. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You have local storage. That's why you don't need to.
It's a local storage. So yeah, so it like all any good digital health app, it works offline. And then we've added a feature called device sync. Like in Liberia, the mini CHWs will never ever be online. So the way that they get their data is they meet their supervisor. The supervisor syncs, and then the supervisor, it's like you remember the old USB keys, the sneaker net, we called it, where you get your internet on a USB key, out to the village. It's the same idea where you bring your phone out, the supervisor syncs, gets the data off the device, and then goes back to the internet at the clinic and then sends it off. So that also is useful if you want to save your costing on internet bundles and things like that too. So that's what the device sync does. Silvelo, I think you have your hand raised.
Is
Or are there others? Sorry, go ahead.
Yep.
Sorry, I'll let you facilitate, Alvin.
Is there another presentation, Matt, or we're now?
No, this is done. No, we're done.
All right, Dr. Bunche, just open your microphone if you have any questions. So where should countries start, Matt? So let's pretend this is the first time they're hearing this.
Yeah.
They want A and C. So what is your recommended step 1, step 2, step 3?
Yeah. So here's where I was presenting where we're at right now, right? So just wanted to show that the vision of this is possible. If you have something like, Alvin, if you have something more specific like meningitis, that can be done, I think, today, right? We're working now, the next step is we're working to implement, there's other work being done that's a bit more technical still on the SDK to support doing the full clinical guidelines to work fully. There's still a couple pieces that are coming in place over the next month or two. So to answer your question is, start looking at FHIR. We'd be happy to talk to you, explain. This is all open source, what this code looks like. Our vision is to have a facility app that'll have the ANC guidelines, the immunization, once PNC becomes available, family planning, OPD, etc. So our vision would be to have one application that you could then load in the different core modules you would need. I think our focus is more the primary health facility, those 70% of facilities that won't have an EMR to start. So I'm not answering your question. I think the point is, reach out. We can introduce you to the community. There's, a couple of groups working on this, but FHIR is a way to do it. And it's ready to go. So
I was sort of expecting you to tell us you should form a team, and then this team will then be the one to take consult you and ask you for what might be the ideal step. And this team, how many people do you think this team minimum should be, and what would be their competencies to work with you?
To do it. So I think there's a couple of steps. There's like in the short term, we're in the tool building phase. So there's still the involvement of groups like us is, I think, important, Google, etc. In the future, then, it'll be easier for local companies to adapt and do this. At the Ministry of Health side right now is the ability to understand FHIR, and then there'll be a process where you want to review the guidelines and then adapt them to localize them for your country's needs, right? So a low birth weight, a high-risk pregnancy weight might be different in Bangladesh versus the Netherlands, right? Because of the way the women are bigger, in different countries. So there's going to be some adaptations. Maybe one country tests for syphilis, another country doesn't, etc. So there's a lot of these different types of localizations that you can make, quite quickly on top of this. So, yep.
So may I extend that, Dr. Bunche?
Please.
We need, so if they want ANC, they want to use your app or to have community health workers all around the country of 100 million people to start collecting household names and ANC status. They need the maternal program person who knows the program.
Yes.
They need data person who knows the data required by the program. And do they need an application person, or they just need to have somebody who knows IT
at this phase, you need somebody that can configure, it's still being worked out. So the configurability is still being built, right? So it'll need to be right now you'd need to have an Android team and, some expertise in understanding FHIR, but that's going to be in a year, that'll be a lot different. So yeah. And again, just to emphasize this, the community health ANC is different than the clinical ANC. What I showed you today is the simple version. It's not the full WHO version. Yeah.
Dr. Bunchay?
I think there is a question in the chat, like can you see that?
From Savello, or which one? From Savello?
Yeah, there is two, Prasad, SAR, and Savello.
Okay, let me see if I missed one.
Prasad Shah was answered.
Yeah, so I did try to answer that. So the device-device sync allows you to sync data between two providers. So like a supervisor and a community health worker, as an example, offline. And then that supervisor, that's what the peer-to-peer does.
Sorry, but how does it do that offline?
Oh, it does it through, I think is it Wi-Fi, Francis, sorry, you haven't had the chance to talk much. Is it through Wi-Fi Direct, Francis?
Yes, so P2P.
Oh, sorry, Ben or Francis.
Okay, yeah. So P2P uses Wi-Fi Direct offline.
So Android provides the ability for to connect, turn your Wi-Fi on, and then it can develop a network over Wi-Fi between two devices. So that's how it does it.
My question is related to the question about the Google computer programming and the semantic. When you're talking about the semantic, I'm thinking about the ICD, SNOMED, drug terminology, or something like that. And it seems like all these Google capabilities kind of the use of natural language processing or some AI to kind of the taking the text that from the questionnaire into those kind of the coding system. Is that the case?
That's certainly possible. So all that, so the two key things that when I say semantic interoperability, I mean two things. One is that we have a structured data model now, right? We know a patient's a patient, provider is a provider. You know, this was a referral, this was a diagnosis. So we have a clear understanding of what that thing is. Second, we have a coding, so all that can be coded. So clinical observations are coded to, and diagnosis are coded to ICD-10 SNOMED codes, right? So you have both that information. Then it's up to the analyst or AI researcher then to build models, because now they have that data, a lot of structured data that's encoded in the right way. That's going to allow breakthroughs. I mean, Thailand must have amazing data that is not in a format that you can use for AI breakthroughs, right? That are specific to Thailand too, because every country has their own health dynamics. So that's what's going to be so powerful. It's going to be, it really is going to unlock a revolution on the analysis side. Analysis right now is DHIS2 aggregate data, right? Or researchers, no real-time AI is not happening yet.
Okay. What I mean is that, to my understanding, that we have the Smart Guideline, the WHO Smart Guideline, right? And what we change, what you do is, put it into the FHIR resource and profile. And in the FHIR, in the resources, they also specific the code system, something like that, SNOMED or ICD. And then what I mean is that did you the Smart Guideline already has the kind of the coding behind those?
Yes, I apologize. Yes, I apologize for not explaining that. Yes, so all the questionnaires come with the encoding built into that, right? So WHO provides that. So it says that hypertension is this code, etc. Including
symptom, right? Something like that.
Yes, all that.
Okay.
So it's standardized forms and standardized output. So if you implement the WHO Smart Guidelines, you know that the data is going to be the specific way. So somebody could say this is a WHO Smart Guideline compliant ANC algorithm, right? In the future.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Any final questions? Matt, we will use FHIRCore and OpenSRP web. After this call, we'll send you an email how to connect that to our Smart FHIR server. Okay.
Yeah, so please reach out. Yeah, if you have any questions, I can put my email here.
Please your email now.
I'm hoping that if the invite's still open, Alvin, we would love to come to the AeHIN meeting in Manila. So we hopefully can meet more people there.
Oh.
And
So,
be more involved.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for mentioning that. So to announce to the people that the AeHIN General Meeting will be in Manila, October 10th.
oh, sorry.
October 10th. And then we will be also, hopefully we'll be also in Washington in December. All right.
Cool.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Savelo. Bye-bye.